I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the World Seniors Snooker Chairman and the co-promoter of the newly announced World Seniors Darts Championship, Jason Francis. Thanks for the time, Jason. How are you doing?
Good morning. Nice to talk to you.
You too, and we'll come on to the announcement at the weekend in a moment, but first, sport has obviously played a big part in your career. What were the main sports for you growing up that you followed?
Well, I played snooker as a child, not very well, but I was down in Cornwall, so you generally used to hang out at the snooker hall on the kind of weekends and evenings after school, so that was my sport. Then I went away to college and got involved in theatre for 10 years. I didn't touch any snooker. Always been a big football fan, and more importantly, always followed the darts.
Good to hear. Well, let's start off with your work in snooker. You run the very successful Snooker Legends Tour for a little while now. Talk to us about how that all started.
So yeah, that started in 2009. I had that idea. Basically, I was running a theatre company at the time, which was children's theatre. So if any of your listeners have got children maybe of teenage years now, when they were 4, 5 and 6, they might have taken them to see Thomas the Tank Engine, Bob the Builder, Fireman Sam, those sort of things. Well, they were my shows. So we were the theatre company that would tour the shows, and I would write them. And getting to 2009, I was beginning to see a bit of a drop-off in the age range of people who were coming to see those shows. I think we were just on the start of iPads and iPhones, and we just never saw the sort of age group we had. So I was looking at my experience in theatre and thinking, well, what else can I do with the theatre and production contacts I've got to maybe try something different? And my background in snooker was an obvious one. And at the same time, I love the darts, so I came up with the idea of doing a bullseye theatre show as well, which is when I first met Eric Bristow, John Lowe and Bob Anderson.
I'll come on to that. I've got that down here as well, actually, to mention. And just sticking with the snooker, of course, you've worked with a lot of the legends of the sport, the likes of the late Alex Higgins, Ronnie O'Sullivan, Jimmy White, the list goes on. What have been the highlights so far that have stuck with you?
Oh, so many highlights. I mean, meeting Alex Higgins and taking him back to the Crucible. I don't think I quite realised then what an important part of almost snooker history that would become. That was just my first Snooker Legends show. I booked it at the Crucible Theatre, and Alex Higgins was there with Jimmy White and Cliff Thorburn. And, sadly, a few weeks after that, we lost Alex, and it became his last ever sort of snooker appearance, which probably was fitting that it was the Crucible Theatre, and the ovation he got that night will never leave me.
Fast forward to 2017, you created the World Seniors Tour in snooker, which led to you running the World Seniors Championship. What was the thinking behind putting those events on?
Well, at that time, I was on the road pretty much full-time with Ronnie O'Sullivan, who obviously people will know, and that was taking us all over the world, and it was taking us on quite a few long-haul flights. And coming back from China, I was on a flight with Barry Hearn, and he'd been out there. We'd both been out there for an event, and we'd both spent some time together. And in some ways, I was fulfilling not a problem Barry had, because it wasn't a problem, but he obviously had an incredibly successful professional tour, but he also had a lot of retired legends of the game that perhaps didn't have a vehicle to play in. They had the Snooker Legends exhibitions, and some of them were doing after-dinner speaking and things like that, and some punditry, but generally they didn't have a competitive level, and perhaps their level had dropped below where they could compete on the professional tour, but they still wanted to compete. So for me, the idea was to try and revamp the World Senior Snooker Championship, which had been done before. I can't claim I was the first one to do it, but also take a slightly different slant on it, where we'd make places available for any snooker player over a certain age that could go to a club, win a qualifier, and potentially walk out of the Crucible Theatre to play a Jimmy White or a Stephen Hendry. So that was the idea behind it. And to be fair, Barry was the conduit between myself and the WPBSA, who are the governing body, and we said, well, let's form World Senior Snooker, let's try and get behind it, and let's try and give some work to some of the servants of the game.
You mentioned there the event now held at the Crucible, home of the professional World Championship in snooker, and you've got the coverage on the BBC as well, so how proud are you of how far you've progressed the senior circuit so far?
People do attach that tour with me, and obviously I understand that. But I mean, there's been a big team of people, incredible opportunities we've had. But ultimately, if once we got on the BBC we hadn't done the viewing figures, then they wouldn't be coming back and asking again. So no matter how good an event you might put on, and no matter how great and competitive you think it's going to be, unless people are watching it, then you're not going to get TV. And we had free sports before initially. I'd done a previous Snooker Legends on Eurosport, so we had done some TV. But to get the BBC, who's obviously the main host broadcaster in this country of snooker, to get the viewing figures we did was absolutely incredible, really, because it was digital and red button. So, this year it was a far easier conversation when they wanted to take the championship again.
Well, let's switch to the darts then. And you mentioned earlier it's a sport that you followed for a long time as well. So what are your earliest memories of either watching it on TV or even playing it?
Yeah, definitely watching it on TV. The board in the bedroom with a couple of mates when I was young. I was generally always John Lowe. My mate was Eric Bristow, and we'd even have Leighton Rees in there as well. So, like any kid, pretend to be your heroes. I always loved the theatre of the event, and that's what excites me. I'm involved in a sport that's very much seen as a gentleman's sport and is steeped in history, and there's a certain demeanour and quiet that comes with attending a snooker event, and that's right and proper. But you look at the darts, and everyone's having a great night out. Everyone who goes to see the darts seems to have a good time. And for me, from a theatre background, that's what also really attracted me. I'm no expert in the sport, which is why I've partnered with an expert in the sport. I'm a fan. And I'm a fan who I hope can perhaps bring and take what is already there to the next level and try and so promote an event that I would like to buy a ticket for myself, if that makes sense. Yeah,
definitely. And the snooker, that's obviously kept you busy in the last 10 or so years since the Bullseye Tour that you mentioned earlier. Has there been any other involvement in darts since that Bullseye Tour, or has it taken a back seat until now?
No, I mean, I've staged darts exhibitions, so I've got the Crucible Sports and Social Clubs, which are sport venues in Reading and Newbury, and they've had darts exhibitions. We've had Eric, Wayne Mardle, Peter Manley. So, I've been involved in darts because my venues have hosted County Darts, Super League. Funnily enough, in Newbury, Luke Humphreys is based at my club in Newbury, who's obviously made huge strides over the past few years. A guy called Jason Heaver, I think, who's just got on the PDC tour. He will have played out at leagues in my club in Newbury. And Paul Hogan as well, who will be known to, the BDO side of your sport. So I've never played league darts, and I'm certainly not good enough to play them. But I've always followed it. And I say one of my business interests has played a little part in helping Luke Humphreys for sure.
Well, let's get on to the big announcement then. Over the weekend, yourself, along with Modus, are going to be co-promoting a World Seniors Darts Championship early 2022, and with it a World Seniors Darts Tour. How did the idea get off the ground?
It did literally become I saw another gap in the market. Obviously, I've seen that the big thing I learned when I moved from Snooker Legends exhibitions to competitive World Seniors Darts, World Senior Snooker, was that the players still wanted to compete. And it didn't matter how old they were. Funnily enough, you've got Jimmy White and Stephen Hendry going head-to-head tonight because Stephen Hendry's made a comeback. Stephen Hendry wouldn't have been making that comeback if he hadn't got his appetite back playing on the Seniors Tour. Let's be absolutely clear. Whenever those two, for example, meet and there's a snooker table in the room, all the memories flood back. They still want to beat each other. So I'm a fan. So you telling me, you look at the names we've already announced and there's more to come. Are you not going to get excited at the prospect of Phil Taylor playing Martin Adams? Doesn't matter what the era is. You don't think they don't want to beat each other just as much as they would have done when they were at their very prime? That's what any sports fan's going to love. And that's the one thing that I said had to happen. If I was going to get involved in this, and as I say, I couldn't have a better partner than Modus with their experience, I said the players have to take it seriously. This isn't an exhibition. No one's going to turn up and wave at the crowd. They're going to have to put months of work in. And the rewards will be there. We've named a big minimum winner's prize. And we've done that for a reason, because that sends everyone a message that this is a serious competition.
Absolutely, and just from our timeline at the weekend, we saw a lot of interest from darts fans and excitement at the news. The headline name involved being Phil Taylor, who you mentioned. How excited are you to have the sport's most successful player involved?
Wow, I mean, ultimately there are very few sports that at their peak, one player may have actually, you could argue, been bigger than the sport. And I don't say that arrogantly. You would look in golf and say for a while Tiger Woods was bigger than the sport. I think you might argue that at times Ronnie O'Sullivan is bigger than the sport. And again, I don't mean that disrespectfully, but for a period of time, Phil Taylor was the standout dominant force in sport, the sport of darts. And who isn't excited to see him throw some arrows again?
Definitely, and we've seen Bob Anderson, Keith Deller on Twitter as well, both saying that they're going to be playing. You've sent invites to a few other players. Are there any other players you can confirm that will be in this first World Championship?
Well, invitations have gone out. It would be unfair to some of those players who not yet accepted those invitations to announce their participation, because there are many factors that people need to realise. That firstly, the idea of appearing in a World Senior Darts Championship on TV with a big prize might sound incredibly appealing. The reality might be that some of these players who might not have been in the spotlight for so long, they might not actually, the reality of that, the months of practice, and also, is their game going to be in the shape where they think they can go out in front of a big crowd on TV? No one wants to embarrass themselves. All top sportsmen have pride. So we understand if certain players who would be invited based on their merits of what they've achieved in this sport might want to consider whether they want to put in all that work and prepare for that sort of championship.
That's fair enough. And I mentioned before we started this, we put out a tweet asking our listeners for any questions for you. Inside the WDF would like to know, how far advanced are the conversations regarding the venue, event dates and TV coverage?
Yeah, so we have actually 3 venues with dates on hold in a 1, 2, 3 order, and that's my priority. We understand that people want to know when it's going to be and where it's going to be, and ultimately sometimes there may be existing contractual issues involved that need to be spoken about, and there also we need to consider how big is this venue going to need to be. The reaction has been absolutely huge, and if we'd have gone and announced a 200-seat venue, we'd have quickly been kicking ourselves, if that makes some sense. TV again, discussions are ongoing. Probably won't be announced as early as the venue for obvious reasons, but well underway is the answer.
Good to hear, and I guess following on from that one, Jan asks, will it be broadcast live to international viewers as well?
Well, that's the plan. I think we would be definitely looking to make sure that anyone who has an interest in the sport, who wants to see this event happen, should be able to. That's the idea. You look at the World Senior Snooker Championship at the moment, and obviously our host broadcaster is the BBC, but outside of the UK, we have Zibo TV in China, we have Superstar Online in China, we have Matchroom Live that carried it outside of the UK. So we have some existing relationships with the snooker which could very easily move over to the darts and give us global coverage, because I think people are going to have an interest, and I hope that interest, which initially might be people saying, well, can they still play, might become very, very interesting when you suddenly start seeing these guys go at each other.
The last of our listener questions comes from FDI, who asks, what format will the matches be played in? And I guess added on to that with the format, is the plan for it to be a weekend event or a week-long event? What's the initial plan for this first one?
So the plan is certainly a 3 or 4 day event, so not just a weekend event. I mean, there will be too much darts to play over a weekend, and again, that's another factor. You've got to think about the age of these players, and you're not going to put them in a 35 leg match, give them 5 minutes off and throw them into another one. You have to understand that these guys they have to be over 50 and they have to be amateur first of all to appear in this event. So that's important. Secondly, we're looking to try to adopt a lot of the history. So for example, it will definitely be legs and sets. That's what I can tell you. So because that's what the original World Championships, which most of these guys won, would have been around. So, and as the legs and sets go on, obviously that will increase. So you'll definitely see a lot of, how can I put it? We'll bow to the past, but we'll also look to embrace the new, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And last one before I let you go, the qualifier for any amateur player 50 plus to try and get into the World Championship, that's penciled in for November this year. But what can we expect to see between now and then I guess the build up to the tournament? Will you be dropping new names as they're confirmed? Any details when they get confirmed to ramp up the anticipation for this event?
Yeah, of course we will. We will. The first job is to secure the world champions. That's obviously the first thing. Ultimately, for the World Seniors Darts Championship to potentially become the World Seniors Darts Tour, not only do we need to make sure that there is an appetite for this, and that's not just fans, that's also TV, but we also need to make sure it's got credibility. So in year one, of course, how do you pick the players that are going to appear? All you have is what they've done in the game. And it's like 1,000 dart fans would sit down and they might name the 16, 20, 24 players they would like to see in a World Seniors Darts Championship. My guess is 99.9% of them would put Phil Taylor in that lineup. After that, you would probably get thousands of different lineups and formats based on fans' favourites, based on people's perception of what a particular event meant at a time when someone won it, based on the fact of where did they travel from to do it. So Jason and I have been very, very careful on this. The one thing that people cannot in any way disagree with is world championships. Let's be clear. You can't, if someone has secured a world championship in this sport across either of the, I guess, up to those times, the two recognised codes that in the time when they played, then I don't think you can in any way deny them an invitation to play in this first event. After that, this tour has to have its own credibility, and that will be its own ranking lists and the chance for people to maintain their place in these events on merit. And also, there will be some players that might love the chance to come back and have a go once. Again, come the end of this event, they might go, that was absolutely fantastic, that was a brilliant chance to see the fans, but I don't want to be putting 3 or 4 hours in on the board every day. And trust me, to be successful in this tour, then they're going to have to do that. So the first thing is to get the World Championships, so the World Champions named, and I'll drop you a little exclusive in a moment of someone who is confirmed. Secondly, is sorting out obviously the venue, the on sale, how that's going to work, and the TV. Then over the course of the time, then we will start building up, announcing more details about the qualifier. And again, there's an absolute pledge that any player, any amateur player not under a contractual obligation with any other federation, over 50 years age, on or before the first day's play, can pick up their darts, they can come to the venue in Reading. If they're successful, they will join that field of Taylor, Adams, etc. Now, if you're a darts player at home, trust me, that would make me want to get back on the board. And that is going to be in November, as I say.
Excellent. Well, Jason, it's a pleasure to chat to you. Really appreciate your time. And if you want to let us know the exclusive name that's going to come in before we let you go, we're happy to let our listeners know.
I'll give you 2 more names that invitation have been announced. One is current BDO World Champion Wayne Warren, and the other one is 2001 World Champion John Walton. They will both be joining the lineup, and I don't think they've been announced so far.
Jason, we appreciate that. We appreciate your time, as I said, and congratulations on the announcement at the weekend. We're all looking forward to seeing how it gets on, and we're looking forward to when the event does eventually happen and seeing how it all plays out.
Thanks for your time, and look forward to working with you guys on helping us promote an unbelievable event.